Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Hey, this is Tyler Jones, and you're listening to the Element Podcast.
Hey there, you sweet hot thing, that smile you have.
Hey, chickadee one, chickadee two, do the do. What's happening, everybody? We are chilling in the Mouse House again. Love this place. Love this place. I'm sitting behind a desk. I feel like I'm kind of in school right now. And over here, being a coffee drinker and quiet as a mouse, Mr. KC Smith, the co-host. What's happening, dude?
I do not have as strong of a voice as normal.
Mm-hmm.
This is plaguing me, man. It's been like 5 or 6 days since I've been like real sick.
Yeah.
I just can't get over this voice thing, so I'm going to sound all, I don't know, raspy today. Sound like I'm tough or something.
Yeah, you aren't, though.
No, not really, because it's like
Whatever.
slightly warm in here and it's already bugging me. So.
Yeah. Well, I know when it comes to Greenbrier, you're pretty tough at least.
Well, I don't
You
know.
rage through some of that stuff pretty
This time
good.
of year it's real soft because it's new growth.
It
you know?
is. I kind of want to eat it. So today we are talking anything summer preparation for whitetails, because lately I've been editing a film, and it's a big old whitetail buck getting shot by myself and being filmed in its glory by KC. And it's been just hyping me up so much. I've just been like, I don't know if I'm speaking to any of you guys out there or not, but like sometimes I just get this thing in my mind where I can really just visualize, and I feel like I'm in the stand, and it's like I can just picture myself being cold. Like I was watching some YouTube yesterday, some late season hunts, and it was cold, and I was like, that is my favorite time of year. I just love when it's cold and the deer got to come out, and they got to eat. It's just glorious time of year. Like, I'm not really a big fan of heat that much, I just don't like hot weather that much, and I live in Texas. So I think the main reason is because of, especially when I was actually throughout high school and college, I always had a dark blue metallic helmet that basically worked like an oven and cooked your head inside of it. And it would be like 108 with no wind in 2 days, and it'd just be brutal. And I just got tired of hot weather. I made myself a promise during college. I was like, if I don't want to be hot again, I won't be. I'm going to run my AC until I have no money left, if that's what it takes. So, but anyway, yeah, I just love cold weather, and I love being in a stand and working on this film, just like visualizing, seeing our reaction and everything. We had like 15 minutes or more probably of actual just camera running reaction time.
We were hyped.
Man, it was, I'm talking like little girls. And so this is going to be an awesome film, I think, that's going to be enjoyed by you guys here in the next couple months, and really excited to release it. So speaking of filming, KC had a good idea, and we're going to talk a lot of whitetail tactics and that kind of thing throughout this, and what we're doing with whitetails, and this is somewhat related. But KC wanted to talk a little bit about cameras in this podcast, because we're kind of try to up our game a little bit.
Yeah, so this is, I'm not as experienced with the camera stuff as you are, but we decided to sit down the other day and kind of go through what we needed to add and tweak and do different things to our camera setup. That way we're doing our best to capture the moment, because that's kind of not why we're out there, but like we want to get what we do on film. It's kind of what we do, right?
Yeah.
And we want to make it the best we can. We had a couple complications last year. Some stuff with some exposure, and there's always focus to worry about, and then just camera arms and this and that and heavyweight and all this stuff. So we have some additions and different things we need to work on. So we were going to kind of talk a little bit about like what we're going to add to this stuff. And, you may not film your hunts, or you may want to but don't know what to do or where to start. So maybe we can help you a little bit with that. We've probably covered this before, but it's always good to remind people, or if in case we've suddenly inspired someone who just thought we were dumb for a while, and then they're like, maybe those guys are right. You should film your stuff. But it's not like super expensive to get into. If you just want to capture a memory and be able to show that to your friends and family and try to, express or convey to them the feeling that you get in the woods. It's kind of an important thing for some people, and some people just don't get why we go out in the woods. And for me, some of my favorite shots that we get aren't like, of course, shooting the deer is like super awesome. But at the same time, it's like the hawks acting crazy beneath their stand, or, the woodpeckers going nutso next to us, or those coons that were in the tree. Like last year, Tyler and I had a doe at like 3 yards.
Well, first it was coming down the trail.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this had happened before the doe came in. We saw these raccoons. Were they babies?
Babies.
Yeah.
There 3 of them in that hole?
I can't. There's at least 2. I know. And so they kind of like, they looked out at us and saw us and watched us for a while.
They're eye level with us.
Oh yeah,
like right here.
Yeah.
9 feet.
They were not far, and so they were just looking at us. And Casey was like, "Look at that!" I was like, "Oh, that's cool." So we watched them for a minute, and they kind of got bored with us. Turned around, started messing around in the hole and everything that they were in, and then like a few minutes later, we hadn't seen them in a minute, and this doe starts coming down the trail, and she gets to like probably 50 yards, and all of a sudden these coons pop back up, and they're looking at us like, "What y'all gonna do about this thing coming?"
Yeah, and then that doe just keeps coming right at us, and she goes right underneath the stand, and then they're like looking down at that deer, and they look up at us, and look down at the deer, and look up at us.
They're like,
and
"What y'all
I'm
gonna
pretty
do?"
sure like they made a noise, and it caused that doe to look up, and it like was a moment of panic for me. I was like, "Oh," we just like froze still.
Dude, that was a good
funny,
memory.
man.
Yeah,
cool.
And it is though, like you said, it's about those little things that happen. I remember we were watching. I showed you the the film. I would say is probably like 85% done overall. There's just a few other things that I've got to add in and this and that. But I showed you that for the first time yesterday, and I remember this one shot where it's a shot that's like way out in this landscape, and it's kind of a little bit hazy off in the distance and everything. And you see these 2 deer moving like 600 yards maybe, way out there. There's just 2 dark dots moving. You're watching them. And then like 5 seconds later, this doe at like 200 yards pops its head up out of this grass, and you're like, "Oh man, like I didn't even see that sucker there." And like those are just, and the same thing happened to me. Like the middle of the screen, you're watching these deer, and then all of a sudden, like the lower third, there's a head that pops up, and the same thing happens every time to me. And I just love that shot, and I think about like how cool it is to have captured that, and to know like to remember that there was just deer everywhere out in that stuff, and you couldn't see them, and that's just an aspect of it. And every little thing, I mean, the reaction we had was priceless, just like it doesn't. if you guys remember, I think episode 22 or something like that, somewhere in the low 20s, I believe, I had my buddy Justin Wright on, and we talked about dealing with the loss of a deer and the big story that we had from Kansas several years ago. And losing this deer that he called Big Mike, that he put what I thought was a really good shot on. So anyway, Justin had shot a deer, I guess the year before, that one of our buddies and he had been in the tree together. They filmed the whole thing, really good films, like 9-minute short film, of him shooting this deer. And he always talks about like, man, I'm so like dumb for acting that way after I shot that deer. And I'm like, dude, that's like the epic part of the whole thing is like seeing reaction comes out of, a human like taking the life of such a big animal and something that they put so much hard work into, and sometimes it is kind of like not so manly, but it's still cool to see that. And like you were saying earlier, like you get to take that and show your friends and family if you're not really, if you're not doing this for anything too much. I mean, at least you can show friends and family, like, this is why I do this. Like, there are so many emotions that this evokes. And, if you're not doing it for, for the purpose of putting it out commercially or whatever, you just want this as a memory, and you're interested in that. Or sometimes, another thing that it can help is we got to go back and watch that footage several times of the shot and know pretty much exactly where I hit that deer,
sure.
just because we had that footage.
Well, there's all kinds of aspects to it. I mean, we can go back and look at like deer behavior stuff too,
Oh, like, yeah, dude.
And see how like you talk about, like with that deer, we had footage of him eating a cottonwood leaf.
Yes.
Like, why on earth would a deer eat a cottonwood leaf? But he did it right there, like it's, and you'd think that like, he's milling around eating corn or something, like it's, on a private ranch. But no, he's eating cottonwood leaves on the ground. Like, why is he doing
dead
that?
cottonwood leaves?
Dried up, like this thing has to be crunchier than a potato chip.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing when you said that. I was like, man, that's cool that we got to, I would have never known that if we hadn't had the footage to go back and watch, because in the moment, that's one of the last things you're thinking about, is what is he eating, because I'm about to pull the trigger is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and then too, like, we got the footage of that deer, like, you got to see, like, almost the emotion he put in to making a scrape. Like, it wasn't just like the action, but like his eyes are kind of like rolling back in his head and he's kind of romanced into it or whatever,
Yep.
It's pretty cool.
Man, there's so much to filming your hunting. If you're inspired at this point or inspired before this point to do such, man, you can get into it pretty reasonably. I know one thing, I'd give a couple of little pieces of gear that can get you started. And I'll tell you also a couple of tips that I would do if I wasn't really trying to do this commercially or make something that was really going to be shared with thousands of other people or anything. If you were just going to have it for your own records and stuff. I've seen some footage from a JVC Everio. I don't know how you say that exactly. It's Everio. Anyway, it'll be linked in the show notes right here. It's about $350, and man, great camera. And they've had them around for a while now. Just a little handy cam. Got you a screen. You can get a camera arm for pretty cheap these days. Put it on the camera arm, and so it's steady, and you can do anything you need to with that thing. And I would say when you've got a deer coming in, zoom in, get a good look at him when he's out there a ways, if he is. And then when you kind of get some footage of him, zoom it off. And as he nears your shooting lane, just give yourself a good wide perspective. Don't worry about getting too tight on him, and take the shot whenever you feel good about it. Also, the Canon Vixia series, they've got several different different qualities of that actual Vixia camera, whether it's offering 4K or just HD or this or that. So that the price range is expansive, but I mean, you can get on same, I think, price range as the JVC, or you can go up to $1,200 maybe. I mean, it's a pretty big range, but you can get what you need to do with that as well. And one thing that we've been talking about is getting a GoPro. And these days they've got them to where they don't look like a big old fisheye as bad, and they're actually, they're good cameras. They have a good dynamic range, which means, the highlights and the lowlights are all leveled out pretty well, and you can see.
So What's that mean?
So basically, your dynamic range is allows you to capture the most detail and color and information throughout the spectrum of really, really bright white to like really, really dark black.
So what you're saying is like if you're standing in a shadow, you can see your face, but also you can see the details of the background behind you that's in the sun.
Right.
Like was what you're saying.
Yes.
Exposure range.
The exposure, if it's in cameras with a low dynamic range, say you're standing in the dark, so I've got to lighten your face up, exposure wise. Well, everything in the background out there in the sun is just white.
Like an iPhone camera, pretty much.
Yeah.
They're bad about that.
Yeah, which iPhone cameras now, I mean, I'm back in the Stone Age on my iPhones, but the new ones are different. Yeah, but yeah, so I mean, even that, like if you have an iPhone X or something like that, man, buy like a couple of things, buy a holder, on a selfie stick or whatever, and put it on the end of a camera arm, and you can do a lot of things with that too. I mean, you can zoom in and got a good dynamic range. It's a great camera and good audio. But I mean, we talked yesterday about what we're going to do personally to kind of up our game, and you've got a list there.
Yeah. The GoPro is going to be a big deal for us because, like you're saying, we can do a lot of our just like run and gun stuff with the GoPro nowadays, with as good as they are, and how they're not the fisheye look anymore, So maybe adding that and being able to do a point of view like a third person in the tree stand with that, as opposed to having to bring a second camera arm and a second heavy camera into the stand.
Which was what we were doing. We had big full frame Canon DSLR camera with a wide angle lens that I don't know was built like a brick, you know, and that's what we were using. And man, when you're talking about, if you can drive your bad boy buggy to a couple hundred yards from your stand and walk into it, then that's great footage, and I would definitely trust doing it with a DSLR. But when we're walking in a mile and a half, man, that's a lot of weight to carry. Yeah. Plus, you got two full camera arms, for both cameras, and then I guess the next point about having that is what happened to us there. And
you actually have to operate it when there's a giant deer coming in. That's another big thing that you got to worry about. And when you're talking about with the dynamic range and autofocusing abilities of like a GoPro,
exactly,
you're just way better off. So that's going to help us out a ton. And then besides that, I mean, you got a new camera this year, actually, for you, right? This is that A7R2.
A7S2.
S2.
Yep.
Okay.
Sony. So Sony A series, and since they've come out with like an A7R3, that's a pretty good meld of video and the still side of things. But this A7S2 is like, I mean, if you've ever watched Planet Earth 2, if you haven't, you need to like stop right now and go to YouTube and watch Planet Earth 2 and then come back to this. But they use the A7S2, a consumer, it's a professional camera, but it's on that like prosumer kind of spectrum, camera on these like, huge projects that are going to be put out for worldwide, like state of the art footage, for the Planet Earth 2 series. They were using these A7S2s in low light situations because of how great low light capabilities they have. And that's, and in the end, I shoot a lot of stills, and I would have liked to have an A7R2 or 3 because of the ability to autofocus and this and that better and shoot high megapixel stills. But I just couldn't. I just knew that also doing weddings, low light situations, tend to shoot deer in low light situations. I just thought this would be the best thing. So that's what I've worked into at this point, and sold my other Sony mirrorless at this point. So that kind of helped out too. And
something that we have to really consider when we're going to do like these out of state hunts, especially when like you're headed north, is the difference in climate, and that's something that really I've learned affects cameras a ton, because batteries, when it gets cold like that, do not last like no time.
Yeah, and that's the bad thing about the A series cameras is small batteries and low, and I don't know if it's just because they're small, but they don't have very good battery life, and they're known for that. And so the camera that you bought last year has been kind of helpful in that department.
Yeah, it's a camcorder style by Sony, the AX100, and films in 4K, great camera. I like it. I mean, the zoom's good on it. You know, it's got autofocus,
60 frames per second.
Yeah, it'll shoot good video, and it's you can buy those big brick batteries to go on the back of. You know, I mean, they're not like the size of a brick, but they're the size of a deck of cards or a little bit bigger, and they'll last for quite a long time. You know, but one of the points to be made is that if you're going to hunt, even around here in the cold, I mean, there was a couple mornings around here where it got cold enough to where battery life was just nothing. So that's one of our big things for next year is we're going to try to really amp up the number of batteries that we have and make sure that we're charged up and ready to go. And then not only that with the when you're still talking about climate, but an improvement we made this past year that helped quite a bit was that dead cat light cover thing.
Which, I mean, being a professional wedding videographer guy, you would think that I would have one, but we do more like music video style videos, so we don't use hardly any audio, and when we do, I've got a different system. And so I've never had a dead cat, and you can, and the whole point that I'm trying to make, I guess, right now is that, like, I mean, if you had unlimited funds, we would have everything. But I mean, you just can't buy everything.
But the good thing about that thing is it's like, okay, so what it is it's you see us even with like a standard looking fuzzy thing around our microphone, right? Just looks like a piece of foam. Well, the dead cat is like that, but with hair on it. It looks like a chinchilla on the end of your microphone. And what it does is it cuts out the wind noise. I mean, we were in like 40, 50 mile an hour winds, and you could still pick up audio from the other person talking pretty well, and it was only like $18 or something, so like there's little things you can do like that. And then batteries too, just they're not that expensive, especially when you buy the like Wasabis off Amazon or whatever, not the name brand ones, they still work just as good, at least they have for me, things like that we can really add this summer to our arsenal that'll really help us a ton. It's that whole like risk versus reward thing where like, do we really need to spend $1,000, $1,200 on a spotting scope? I talked about that, like it'd be cool, of course, but it's a lot of money. How much are we going to really use it, as opposed to like, can we take half that amount, spread it out amongst a bunch of things, and really step up our game?
And not to mention, I have a long lens for one of my cameras, so we can just look through
you got
that.
a 600 millimeter lens for your camera,
So, but I mean, and I would say, like when you start to rank some of these things of importance, actually a dead cat on top of a mic is, I mean, in my opinion, even if you're just doing it for yourself, pretty important. Like you want to be able to hear yourself if you go to talk to the camera and be like, hey guy, when you watch this in 15 years, this is what you were thinking. You know what I'm saying? You want to be able to hear yourself. And, so that, I mean, they make little short ones for GoPro. They make, if you end up doing just a GoPro or something like that, which is fine. I mean, you can get everything you need. I got a buddy who's been on the podcast that does GoPro footage a lot of times from his bow. And it's hard to see, but it's also not it's like the third generation GoPro, but it's hard to see the deer, but you can see it, so. Yeah. And it's cool for him to watch. He put it on YouTube and he's going to have it there forever,
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
So, I mean, the mic is important. Having batteries is important, but you may not need as many as we're going to have. And that kind of brings me to another point is, when I went to British Columbia and then into the Black Canyon. So I've been to BC twice, into the Black Canyon once. Those were both backcountry trips where, like, you had what batteries you took in there, and then I bought a solar charger to try to charge them, and then you have what SD cards you're taking in there. And honestly, definitely didn't have enough SD cards going into all those trips, especially the first BC trip. And so I just kind of had to, like, there was times when, like, I would like to have been videoing, but I just didn't, and maybe that makes you selective with getting the best of the best, but there are moments that I look back on, I'm like, I wish I had a little bit of this or that, and SD cards are getting cheaper, and it's one of those things, like, I've lived pretty poor for a long time, so it's frustrating, but I just wasn't able to buy any more 32, 64, 128 gig cards at that point, so, but I mean, have a couple of cards and have a place to put your footage, so that if one of your cards messes up on you, you've got that footage.
Yeah.
So whether that's just a computer or external hard drive for your computer or whatever. So anyway, those are definitely important things. What else are we looking at kind of raising the bar on? Is there anything else?
Well, just like you said, more SD cards. And I think that something that we're going to also try to key on a little bit is that we always have a 16 gig like blue card in our pocket. I don't know what you call them, but like the trail camera style cards. You know, everybody probably knows what I'm talking about.
Cheap.
You know? Yeah, cheap. That they're not a fast riding speed. You know, they're like class 4 or whatever. You know, but how many times have we like been trying to pull an SD card out of a trail cam and don't have a card? Or the other day we went to set one and I left the sneaking SD card in the truck, and we had to walk out like a mile and go get an SD card and come back.
Dude, and that was the last like part of the day, so we were just
hot.
beat. We were so tired, and I've been carrying 5 pounds of snake boots around.
Tyler wouldn't even let me get Dairy Queen on the way home. It's so bad.
Oh, whatever.
But yeah, we can buy those ScanDisk 16 gigs are like the way to go. I mean, like they will hold like 4,000 pictures or something crazy like that, you know. And you can buy a 2-pack for like $12
at Walmart.
Yeah.
So we'll link to that too in the notes. So make sure if you're looking for some trail camera cards, check that out in the notes. And yeah, I mean, definitely we need that. We need to have several of those. And we talked about that when we realized on the way back after we forgot. We were like, you know what? We should honestly have like 2 in our backpack, each one of our backpacks at all times.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And well, what's silly is like I bought one of those, and these are cool. We'll link to this too. Like SD card holders that's kind of waterproof on Amazon. They're real cheap. They're like $6 or something like that. And that might be a little bit overkill because SD cards aren't really that sensitive, but it's just a good place to keep them all together. It's kind of the harder thing to do, you know. And I left that in the truck, you know, as opposed to like just carrying it with me, you know. But if we'd have, it's kind of like having your, you know, you've got a bank account. If you're smart, you got a bank account. It's got money in it. You also got a little something somewhere else just in case you need it, right? That would be the same thing you do with the SD cards. You know, try to just always have a couple on you just in case you need them, like, because it'd been really nice that day, especially to have those around.
Dude, that was a tough trip back in there, man. But it was actually could have been worse if it was in like the first spot we went, because like just the trip out wasn't too like impeded or too up and down. And then not to mention like we found what we considered to be a very good potential spot to kill a big buck or even just some does in the early season or whatever. Like we were excited about that spot, you know? Yeah. But anyway, I mean, we're thinking about, we've got several different things that we talked about. This is how we want to do this and that. And, I think that hopefully this will expand our potential of what footage we can get to show you guys a little more of us doing the things in between sitting in a stand, shooting deer and this and that. And then also when that's what we're doing, to capture it the best way possible so you guys can see everything we're doing. I mean, and hopefully learn from it or be inspired or whatever, you know, and that's exciting to me that we, are going to be able to have these abilities to do this. And we've got a lot of hunting to do next year.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
we've got a lot of places to go, a lot of cool stuff to do. And that's another reason why we're like, we're almost doing this podcast just to help ourselves kind of consolidate all our thoughts. You know what I mean? And hopefully y'all can get some ideas or inspiration from it as well. But all these trips that we're going to have to take, we're going to kind of have to change up a little bit of like how we do some things and maybe rethink some stuff. And what helps is we did a little traveling last year for hunting and like learned some stuff. And one of the big things, especially after having success, that we learned that we're going to have next year is a stinking deer cart. And I'm kind of ashamed to not have one at the moment, you know. But
it's just one of those things. Another thing you got to spend $40, $100, $300 on, whatever it is, you know.
However level you want to go with it, you know. But exactly. And man, sometimes you can just get out in the middle of nowhere and can't borrow one, you know. So,
and I'll tell you this, man, it would have been good to have last year.
Oh, my goodness.
We had a gigantic body deer that we had to drag out.
I bet we spent like 4 hours, like from the moment like we said, okay, he is field dressed, we're going to start dragging. I bet it was like close to 4 hours.
Dude, we started, pretty sure we started dragging when it was like regular old sunlight.
It was daytime.
And it was
Yes.
like almost dark.
Like almost past camera light when we get that sucker back. And you and I talked about this. Like one of the things you have to do whenever you're going out of state or going on just on a trip that's not just out of state, but just somewhere other than the back 40, is be efficient in everything that you do. Mm-hmm. And when you spend 4 hours dragging a deer out, you're not being efficient. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole lot of other footage, a lot of other shots and stuff, a lot of things we could have been doing at that moment that we spent instead, like dry heaving next to this deer because we've been eating too many duplex cookies. But
dude.
But
there's no such thing.
Really though, like there's like we did a great job of capturing everything that happened, but there's still so many things we wish we would have had. Like,
kudos to you, dude. You did a lot of cam work that day, and for a guy that was really learning a lot of new gear and stuff.
I'm still a green hand still now.
I've talked a lot in private about like this shot that I wish we had, or this was messed up and stuff. And I haven't really probably even told you enough about how good most of it is.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah. But what I really regret is that we don't have a shot of you and I behind that deer.
I know.
It's like
we talked about that. What the heck?
I don't know, man. And then it's not like something that we want to like show off to everybody or whatever. But like, man, that's the memory. Like that's our deer. We killed it together.
I know,
we didn't even do that. But by the time we got to that point, we were exhausted, ready to go back and eat a pizza and just chill out with our deer.
Thin crust, pepperoni, pineapples, peppers, triple P.
But yeah, so anyways, that's one of the improvements that we really probably need to work on. And it's one of those, like we said, a small thing that we can do to really
for sure
increase our efficiency.
Yeah, and another thing that we've been noticing that we need to work on are our archery setups. And this you may have noticed, but we've done several kind of archery episodes lately because, this is a great time. This is when you start like deer starting to grow their velvet, which means we need to start thinking about how we're going to kill these big old velvet bucks that we're starting to see. And so we've basically passed up the postseason scouting and turkey season, whatever that is for most people. and now we're at this spot where like it's kind of the heart of the off season, and the only thing you can do that's really that productive is work on your bow, a little bit, and shoot and try to get better. So that's what we're doing. And I haven't done this hardly at all. I'm very green and new to all this. And so KC's teaching me a lot, and so are PJ and Chris B, which are some podcasts that we've done recently. Teaching me quite a bit about what maybe I should do and giving me some good tips. So, you've been talking about several things that you've wanted to do with your
and
setup.
let me back up by saying I'm not an expert on this stuff at all. I just have a little more experience maybe with bow tinkering than you do. But I like when it comes to like doing stuff with your string and timing and that kind of stuff, not me. But I've put on some sights, put on some rests, done that kind of stuff. And I'm really okay. I'm going to save the big thing for a second. But something I'm going to do for sure is I'm going to start tinkering with my arrow setup a little bit and maybe learn or I've been learning how to build arrows digitally. I haven't actually put my hands on it or anything, but I think I'm going to do that this year. I'm going to buy that Bitzenberger arrow fletching jig and start fletching my own arrows, cutting my own arrows, and really try to, fine-tune what my arrow's doing and what I want it to do on a lethality index. So this year, I did not shoot a deer with my bow, but I shot a hog that I didn't get a pass through. Last year I shot a hog I didn't get a pass through, and I've really been looking at broadhead stuff, because I am convinced that now, this is where I'm at now. I've been to other places in the past, but now I feel that a complete pass-through with a slightly smaller hole is better than one hole with an arrow plugging it with a big giant blade. And I really want to, fine-tune my broadhead so that I can get pass-throughs. I don't have penetration issues. And how you do that is mess with your broadheads a little bit, and then also make sure that you're packing enough punch, enough kinetic energy, enough momentum with your arrow to make that happen. And right now I'm shooting a bow that's moderate speeds, a little bit older Matthews, and a fairly light arrow. And I'm just, with the broadheads I've been shooting, I don't think I'm getting that, and we're talking about going to the Midwest, doing some rattling and calling from the ground. And if you want to take, a quartering to or a frontal shot on a whitetail or anything really, you're going to have to pack a punch, So I'm really looking at maybe switching to a heavier arrow, increasing the front of center on my arrows, and really shooting something that's going to do some damage when it gets there and break bone if it needs to and get the pass through. Because, we talked about it with Chris B.
Yeah, I was going to say that your ideology kind of started after watching a few of his videos,
yeah,
right?
man. Chris B. this past year, he shot it was kind of ridiculous, but it worked. That Easton FMJ and a Helix broadhead, I think he was in the low 500 grains or something like that, and he was just blowing through stuff. And he says it in his videos. He told it to us it's overkill. But what happened was every deer he shot didn't know what happened and fell within sight. And I'm not saying that's going to happen every time, but it's pretty cool, you know. I like that idea because every deer I've ever shot with my bow flies off a wild who knows what, and goes out of sight and crashes and does all kinds of crazy stuff, So I really like that idea of just being super lethal and being able to, in case you have a marginal shot where you hit something on the shoulder or something like that, be able to just blow through there and still be lethal.
So with that setup and what you just said, do you plan on crowding the shoulder a little more? Because you're going to get a pass through with a light arrow if you hit in the paunch. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
and I've done that.
Are you right? And we talked about that yesterday.
Yeah.
So do you kind of say, well, I'm gonna make sure it's in the crease. I'm just gonna make sure I don't hit back. You know what I'm saying? Whatever I do.
Yeah. Well, I probably won't change my aiming point. I always try to aim for right at the back of the heart. Double lunging. Double lungs are really what I prefer anyways. I just don't think that deer go as far on a double lung as they do a hard shot. But my big thing is the frontal stuff. If we're going to be on the ground, I want, if a buck's coming in and he's having a territorial or an aggressive response to a decoy that you're holding up, he's not going to give you a broadside shot, and I don't want to be in a situation where we've got a deer at 18 yards and we can't shoot him, because we don't have the right shot. And I guess part of it too is because I like to elk hunt too. So I really would like to be able to shoot the same broadhead arrow set up at elk as I do whitetail and just all be one and the same.
So do you worry about, with the big heavy arrow and obviously more drop at distance, do you worry about are you going to be checking more often with your rangefinder or, because now 5 yards can make a lot bigger difference than it did maybe in the past. So you get out there at 35, is it 35 or 40? Though it's kind of a big difference.
Yeah, maybe it's not, you're not shooting as flat, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so another thing that I'm exploring is actually swapping my bow completely and getting a new bow, which is
heavy
scary.
Draw, like an 80?
No. I'm
going
to stick with the Matthews. Matthews doesn't go up much past 70,
Just look for speed.
Yeah, well, they're just so much more efficient, and I'm not going to shoot an arrow that's in that 550 range, but I'm looking at somewhere between 485 and 500. And if you're listening and you've got advice on this or suggestions, because I'm just learning and just kind of trying to accumulate knowledge, reach out and let me know kind of what your thoughts are. But I've just been doing some research, and that Matthews Tri-X, man, I shot one recently, and it's the real deal. It's the quietest and most shock-free bow I've ever shot. I couldn't believe it. And if I put an arrow set up like that on a Tri-X, I'm still going to be shooting 20 feet per second faster than what I'm shooting right now.
Gotcha.
So, and that's a big investment, but I don't look at it as a short-term thing. I'm going to buy that bow for the next 10 years,
Yeah, and it's also, when it comes to killing deer, maybe the most important part of the whole equation.
Yeah, for sure, man.
If you can't shoot accurately, you're probably not going to kill many deer, you know? So it's definitely important. And, you know, we talk about shot placement and some of these very important things with a special guest that this podcast will release. It'll be maybe a couple months, but we're excited to bring that to you. And we recently did that interview, so you know, pretty excited about that.
Yeah, that one should be good. Wink, wink. But that'll be a good interview, and it's just kind of continuing on this whole journey of like perfecting our craft, and I kind of take that whole arrow building thing from like the fly tying side of stuff, and it might sound weird to people, but like it's just I enjoy being in control of my setup, and I don't like how I've always done my arrows where I just go into a shop and somebody just says, here, this is what you need to shoot, and just take their word for granted, which I'm not saying like discount your local pro shop or anything, but like I enjoy understanding why things do what they do.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I was talking to this with Bo the other day. I was like, man, you know, I had a guy that was on the football team in college and was also an economics major. And so we went through every class together, pretty much same, you know, we're same age and everything. And this guy had a 4.0 all the way through college. And I would sit there and we would study together, and I would be like, hey, why? And he'd be like, I don't know. It's just what she wants us to do. That's just the graph that she wants us. That's how we answer this question. It's like, you don't know why?
Yeah.
He was like, no. He could just like literally memorize the graphs that needed to, and had a 4.0 because of it. And my grade was not nearly that, but at least I understood why things happened on most of them. I didn't know every one of them because I couldn't memorize it all or whatever, but like I understood why this happened this way, and I felt really good going into tests, and my GPA increased tremendously once I started to study and understand why.
Yeah.
And which is kind of like, well, your knowledge and your success will tremendously
and that's
increase.
the whole idea. Like, you know, I understand the fact that I'm not going to kill more deer only because I get a new bow. But it might help me a little bit. You
might kill one more that you would have missed,
and this
or whatever.
is the stuff that, like, this time of year especially, like when there's nothing else in your control, you know, maybe you can do something to actually improve your odds, you know, or help you, you know, and that's kind of what we're striving for. I mean, and you're doing some stuff on a different level than I am, or you've actually put things into play. Mine's just all talk at the moment. But so what have you been doing, and why have you been doing that?
Well, my biggest deal, I felt like, and I'm not a gear research guy.
That's why we work good together.
Yes.
I love it.
I mean, I get to listen to him, and he gets to tell me, like, you know, this is what I think about this and that. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to be quiet because I don't know.
But Tyler actually kills stuff, so there's that.
Well, maybe I'm lucky or something. I might need to play the lottery sometime. But I have started. So last year, I really started to feel like, okay, so several years ago, I really shot a lot preparing for an elk hunt that I went on, 2011 maybe. Same bow, same rest, everything. The rest is a whisker biscuit, and so guys are probably rolling their eyes right now. But this is what I was set up with.
PJ like suggested a whisker biscuit.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
like they are almost foolproof.
Yeah, they are. I really do like them a lot. There's just one thing that I don't like, and that's the accuracy. I feel like, you know, I mean, I have heard several people tell stories about them for different things that they don't like them for, but the only thing I've really noticed is accuracy. And so I shot a bunch, like I said, preparing for this elk hunt, and I was shooting out to 70 and 80, and I was shooting pretty well. And it wasn't terrible, it wasn't great, but it was pretty good. Felt pretty good about my groups and stuff. And I would just guess that over the years, things have changed within that biscuit. You know what I'm saying?
The whiskers are less biscuity.
Yeah, that biscuit. So
that's one of those little kid almost cuss words. Isn't
yes.
Son of a biscuit. I remember I used to say that.
Oh yeah, all the time. So anyway, I can't even continue now. But so as I shoot more and more, I start noticing. First of all, I start noticing, like last year maybe, that like I am just not shooting for. I mean, it is Duke shooting.
I remember your confidence, like was hit. I remember that going even into our trip that we took last year. You killed that deer on. You didn't feel good about your shooting.
No, I was like, dude, if it's 30 plus, 30 out to 40, I am kind of scared of making this shot.
Yeah.
And I mean, I truly was, because I couldn't get my groups to. I couldn't group at all, hardly, out that range, and it's just frustrating. And I don't have a ton of money, like I said, so I don't have I don't have a ton of arrows that are maybe set up exactly like they should be, or the same age, same cut, this and that, And anyway, I was not feeling good. I start looking at my whisker biscuit, and the fibers are all like junked up on a few spots where I guess the fletching goes through every time, And I'm like, that has got to be something. You start putting 3 fibers on the left this shot and 5 on the right, and then 5 on the left and 3 on the right the next shot. That's got to throw it off from the beginning. I mean, you talk about people talk about shooting through grass or whatever, if it's close to the deer. Well, this is as far from the deer as you can get, you know. And so I start thinking, man, this is not good. And last year at the time I was broke. Didn't have, I just thought, well, just going to have to try to make the closest shot I can. And luckily the 2 that I made were 25 or so and 23, but probably both 23. And so I've moved to the QAD Ultra Rest HDX rest, which is like the most highly reviewed rest ever.
Well, it helps that they come like as an option on all the Matthews bows now, so a ton of people shoot them.
Yeah,
and they've got a few haters out there, but they're pretty good.
The reviews that I've seen, I mean, I'm sure they've paid for some in the bow hunting magazines and stuff, but I've looked through a lot of different media, and the reviews have been good. And I'm not a guy that's going to sit there and look at reviews all day either. I mean, so like if I'm going to I'm going to see 10 reviews or whatever, and if 9 of them are good, I'm just going to know that one hater is probably just hating,
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I bought it, and I thought, well, I'll try it out and see. And I got a really good deal on it on Amazon. So if I can find the link to that, I'll link that in the show notes as well, in case you're interested. But it's just a drop away wet rest, and we put it on yesterday, and we started messing with the tuning, and probably will end up going to the pro shop to get it completely, tuned up, just because there's things that we're still learning that we don't know.
Yeah.
And we could only go so far with it,
I know a little bit about paper tuning, but like we kind of maxed out that rest on how far you could move it one way, and it still wasn't tuned perfect. So I think we're going to have to move your knocking point a little bit.
That's what
possibly
we were thinking about doing.
Yeah, and I can't really do that,
Yeah,
especially with the tools we have. So, but I bet you, dude, also, and I know that you're going to have to resight in your bow, but you're actually probably going to have to mess with your pin spacing too, which I don't know if you planned on doing that though, because I bet your bow speeds up between 5 and 8 foot per second.
You think?
Yeah, not having that whisker biscuit on there, because that's so much drag on that
Oh,
arrow.
yeah, I can imagine for sure. So that's another good thing, I mean, shoot flatter, and that'll help out at distance. And so, I'll take it in there and probably get him to mess with it a little bit, just make sure that that we're tuned up and ready to go, and then I'll get on the range with it and start working, which I've been shooting just to strengthen my shoulder. I've been shooting the last few days, trying to get a daily cycle going, until deer season. And I'm pretty excited about the rest, man, because I'm hoping that like it'll get me to the point where I feel like deadly again with a bow out to 40, which I haven't really felt that way in a while. And hopefully I'm also thinking about doing a stabilizer this year, more lengthy stabilizer, which is, Chris B shoots with a big stabilizer. I asked PJ Riley about it, and he said the same thing. And I actually looked at his setup on their YouTube channel recently, and I mean, he's got a big old long stabilizer on there, and I don't know exactly what I'm going to do yet. So if you have any information about what you like or about stabilizers, feel free to send us a message on Facebook or Instagram or through the website with the email, and I'll take any advice I can get, because I'm just trying to, like I said, put all the reviews and advice into perspective and see what I need to do, and probably just going to try to get something pretty quick, start shooting with it, and see what I think about it. So, also going to do arrows as well.
You are going to do more arrows?
I think I'm going to do new arrows. I think we're going to probably end up with a very similar arrow, maybe different weights.
It would be great if we can shoot the same arrow, because me and Brennan have done that in the past. But I don't know if we're going to be. If I get a new bow, we won't be able to. I don't think. But if I continue on with my adrenaline, then we probably can shoot the same arrow. And the reason I say that because, like, if you're in a backcountry situation, or even if we're like, hunting whitetail in the same place, it's really nice to just be like, hey, let me see one of your arrows right quick, or something like that. You know what I mean? Just because you never know. I'm one of those people, man. I go into the woods with a full quiver. You're not. I've seen you go in the woods with 2 arrows. I'm like, what are you doing?
That's all I had.
It gives me panic.
There's no more.
Yeah, but I don't know. I like having that ability, and we're going to shoot something similar, I think, because we both kind of have that FMJ on our minds, just trying to get a little bit more momentum out of it. And you like the idea of like having the skinnier shaft is something that you really like.
Yeah, and after talking to you, I realized that the insert's different, So
Well, those 5mm are still skinnier than like a standard carbon arrow.
Right. I'll be doing that 5mm, I think, is what I'll probably do. And I don't know. One thing we talked about yesterday working with my bow is I have 2 arrows that are of similar backbone, spine, and one that's different. And I was like, and I didn't even know that, but they look different. So I should have known they were probably different. But those are the only 3 good arrows I have right now. So this is sounding really
what's
bad.
What's funny is that, so you've got 2 400 spine arrows that you shoot. That's kind of like your go-tos. And then you had that 300 in there, which is stiffer. Like it goes in reverse. If you're listening, you don't know that. Like the smaller the number, the stiffer the spine. And you were like, man, that one shoots.
Yeah, I shoot
shoots
that one
lights
good.
out. And I was like, it sounds like that 400 might be a little bit under spine for your setup. You might be shooting a little bit too light of an arrow. So, something that 350. It's one of those deals, and this is something I'm learning. But from what I understand, when in doubt, over spine. So you're better off shooting like a dowel rod than you are a pool noodle. You know what I mean? So
I'm kind of wondering if that has affected my accuracy as well. You know, like shooting those, because that other arrow is not one that I typically like during the season practiced with. You know, it's just kind of like something to shoot. In the off season or whatever. But yeah, I wonder if that has affected my accuracy with, I guess wobble
Maybe
or whatever. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm looking at. And I'll probably continue to shoot those 3 arrows and see, is it really a consistent thing that I shoot that arrow better, or maybe I was just feeling like that day or something.
We can do a little math too and figure out exactly what you need to be shooting. Once we figure out, what your poundage and your speed is and get your bow all tuned up right, we can see what your ideal is and then kind of mess around with that.
For sure, man. So that's kind of what I'm planning on. I really only plan on buying a rest this year, but I kind of need some more arrows, and so I'm thinking about maybe just changing them up anyway. And I feel like the stabilizer is going to be one of those things that maybe if I get my bow tuned up and I'm shooting pretty lights out, I might just forego that this year. Yeah. Just to save $70-$100 or whatever,
Well, if you're not looking at shooting, you want to be confident to 40. Of course, the stabilizer is going to help, but is it really going to be a difference maker? Do you have to have it? Did you kill a deer last year without it?
That's right. Yeah. I didn't shoot a deer at 40, but that is true, man.
The fun part about bow hunting is getting them close, though. Sometimes
absolutely.
I have to remind myself of that a lot because I enjoy shooting long ways. But I think you kind of taught me that this year, really. Like going to some of the places that you hunt and filming you, and like the deer trail is like at 7 yards. It's pretty cool.
There, if I can get them under my stand.
Yeah,
I just like not breathing for several minutes. at a time.
Me too, man. That was great when it's freezing cold and you're holding your breath. It's nothing like being like as uncomfortable as you possibly can be. It's good stuff.
It is, man. It makes it worth it.
But on the arrows, the good thing is that, like, I am planning on doing the whole arrow building, even if, like, I don't move to FMJs or whatever. So all you got to do is buy shafts. I'll have fletchings, and I can build them for you. As long as you don't mind me being an amateur.
I might watch you build yours first to see how they shoot.
Well, see, I wanted to experiment on yours first and then build my own.
Yeah.
No, but I think I enjoy tedious processes like that, so
Yeah.
I think I'll be decent at it. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I have a little bit of trouble with stuff like that sometimes.
I noticed the other day we were putting on your site, you were like, he just like
Throw my hands up. Whatever.
Tyler glances at the instructions and just goes to throwing it on his bow, and I was like, let's do this.
It's probably not good to be this way, but like sometimes I'm just like, I love whatever I can do that's the most productive. And so like screwing a screw in that won't screw in is like the worst thing I can do, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, once we get these things set up and we get our camera gear in line, we get our backpacks put together like we want them to and everything, and we've done our summer scouting, you know, it's game time, and that's in, you know, a few months, not far from now. So, you know, we kind of have been putting together, we always are putting together game plans when it comes to like where the whitetail's going to be, because you can do all this stuff, and we talk about this, and I just said this, you know, like your bow is maybe the most important part of actually killing a deer. But, you know, on the other end of the spectrum, if you don't have a deer to kill, then you're not going to kill it with that, you know. So we talk about this a lot when, you know, guys get on forums and stuff and they never even killed a deer and they're giving out advice and stuff. And then you've got guys that are like natural born killers that don't say nothing, you know. And so, you know, you don't want to just be the guy that's like, oh, I'm archery tech master, you know, whatever. And, you know, I got all my camera gear. Like, I can get them on film really well. So you want to be the guy that can put the deer in front of you. And we have, you know, and we have these kind of game plans for the next year. And we expect and we have drawn tags in several states so far this year. And we're looking at like anywhere from 2 to 4 states probably. And so that's out of state. And then, you know, we've got stuff in state. So let's just, I guess, kind of start out with a couple of like, I guess our overall outlook here in Texas. And then we've got a couple of detailed spots that we like to visit quite often with trail cameras and stuff. You know, overall, we've got some new spots in several different areas picked out that we are going to likely visit this year. We've got some really exciting stuff on the horizon state-wise. And, you know, really, I guess for me, I've talked about in the past, and I think it's going to be similar, whereas I guess 2 years ago I'd have probably shot anything legal. Last year I was kind of looking for a 3-year-old, but I maybe would have taken a solid, you know, 2-year-old. I don't know, but it just kind of would have been situational. But this year, again, I think I'm looking for that 3-year-old or better. I don't know if you're still holding a little bit higher level or not.
I mean, I'm looking for a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the experience.
Yeah.
Like last year, even I rattled in that 3-year-old 7-point while we were on the ground, and he came from like 15 yards, and I was juiced. I was ready to shoot that sucker.
He was in our grill in like no time.
Oh man, that was crazy. That was fun. It was good to see that they'll react that way on, you know, like a heavily pressured piece. They'll still do that if you know, find the right spot. But you know, it's going to be one of those things, and this opportunity doesn't arise very often. But you know, big deer is a big deer. But around here, it seems like they got to kind of get to that probably 4-year-old plus before they get to, you know, being that big body, the big horns, you know, what we're looking for in a buck. I feel like with the information we've gathered and possibly how many times we struck out last year, like we should be able to encounter deer that are of that class that I'm looking for. I mean, last year from the stand, we saw 2. I've said this before on here, you know, but we saw a leader, which if it hadn't been for some stupid brush, I probably would have killed. I didn't shoot at him, you know, but like just didn't take a shot because it wasn't a good shot. But he was well within my range. And then we had a really big 6-point that was that same class of deer that I would have shot.
About 50 yards or so.
Yeah, exactly. He just took the wrong trail. If he would have taken a closer trail to us, you know, would have got a shot at him. But anyways, like it can happen. It will happen if we
Yeah.
put in the time, I think. And I think that we've located an exponential amount more spots where we have that available. Last year, and these two spots we're going to talk about here, but last year we had 2 spots that we really thought we could kill a mature deer. I'm going into it this year with, I can't even count how many spots that we, through trail camera study and just observation and stuff like that, we've got a lot of places that I feel pretty good about in this state.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, one of which is the place where we rattled in that deer you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, we checked the trail camera while we were in there that had been hanging for a while, and there was a sure enough toad on there.
Yeah.
Like heavy horned, big frame deer, big old sagging belly, sway back. And, that's one of those spots where and so we have a couple of these spots that we've kind of picked up on this year that could easily get messed up. But they're almost like corridors right on the edge of pressure. I mean, right on the edge of pressure. We're talking like maybe even 100 yards or so from stands, like active stand locations, but just in a spot where the deer know they haven't seen humans in a long time. And this area we found rubs, like Midwest style rubs that we have not seen like on any other property in Texas, really. And then we've got another spot that's a kind of a corridor, same situation. We made a mock scrape and didn't check the camera until there was a few days left in the season. And from late November on, it was just cruising city, big bucks, 4-year-old deer, 3-year-old deer.
Yeah, and what's crazy, I mean, the reason we didn't check that camera is because we lost confidence in that spot. We ran a camera in that general area all year long, but we went down there and made that mock scrape, 200, 300 yards from the previous camera location, and that made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I mean, this was based off an assumption that we had.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just like blind luck. Because we had seen one pretty solid deer come through this camera location, but it was at night, and it was just my whole theory from hanging this camera had kind of been blown a little bit. It was still there. It just wasn't a daytime pattern. It wasn't something that exactly worked out like I thought it would. But we did have that one buck, and we thought, man, everything we're seeing is coming from this direction. Let's move it. Moved it down a little bit closer to human pressure. And then right there on the edge of it, man, just blowing up our cameras. So in daytime and everything. So we've got that kind of thing working for us right now. We've got some possible water access stuff that we're looking at doing, which is something that's effective. And the good thing is all throughout the state we've got low water access in creek systems, and people talk about this all the time across the country, that water access is a good thing to use, and that it drives a lot of people away. So we'll see if that's the case. But we still got our spots that we've been going to on foot, like the place that you've probably heard us talk about, TR and Babylon. And personally, TR is a place where we got a real big buck. We got teenager, and we've got about 2 years of history with him. Well, really a little over a year, but by the season we'll have nearly 2 years of history with him. And he's a big old deer, but he's pretty unpredictable. Travels quite a bit, it seems like. Didn't have good info from last summer of him, which hurt us early in the year, I feel like.
And that's something that we're going to address and have addressed. Part of the reason we didn't have good info of him is because we were using some trail cameras specifically in that spot that just did not work well for us at all. And you've done some stuff to address that. I bought a few that worked a lot better. We've since lost them. And then you have purchased a few that we're going to be putting out over there.
Got a bunch of muddy cameras coming right now, which I liked my muddy. I think it was a little bit higher class muddy, but it's toast now.
Yeah.
And I've got a bunch of new muddies coming, and then an Exodus. We're going to try Exodus cameras this spring and off season throughout the summer, and see what we think about them. We've got a couple of them coming as well. So pretty exciting. We've got several different brands that we're working with. I know you mentioned recently, I think on the podcast, that Stealth Cam that we were using, there's cheap Stealth Cams were.
Oh, they're great for the price, man.
Yeah.
For sure.
So we're kind of like narrowing it down, hopefully starting to get narrowed down to cameras that work well and don't break the bank. And we're gonna have hopefully get us several cameras out. We've already got 2 out over there this year. And expecting that we'll be able to see that he's one of the bigger deer in the area and kind of follow him as he goes throughout the year and maybe put more up and get a web going over there. You've kind of got some new ideology on Babylon a little bit going into this season.
Yeah, last year, Babylon's one of those sensitive places where it's really close to pressure, and we've always kind of saved it a little bit, didn't want to go in there and mess it up too much. And this past year, we felt really good about Babylon.
We hunted the fringe, though.
Yeah, we hunted the fringes and didn't hunt near acorns, which really messed us up this past year, I think. But that's one of those hindsight 2020 situations. But by the time we pushed in, we really only had maybe 2 weeks, if that, where we didn't have other people on top of us. Mm-hmm. And the pressure in there really, really, really showed. We are always as careful as we can be about wind direction and how we approach and scent control on the way in. You're always going to leave some ground scent, and you're going to blow a place out if you go in too much, no matter how careful you are about stuff. But always hunt things on the right wind. Always use, weather fronts to your advantage, the rain, whatever you can do to get in there right. But that doesn't mean on public land that everybody's doing that. Mm-hmm. I mean, we hunted that stand a couple times where we had headlights within 75 yards of us of dudes who were just straight up hunting it on the wrong wind. Mm-hmm. And you just want to yell through the woods at that moment. But instead I flashed them and they didn't care that I was there. So
they just kept coming.
Just kept coming on. But
frustrating.
Anyways, that's public land for you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all just to say this year I'm not going to treat Babylon like it's my baby. I'm going to press in there on the right days and try to kill something. And if we don't, that's fine because we got other spots too. I'm not like the scar thing was fun, but it's over.
Yeah.
We didn't see him at all last year. And there's other big deer in there. There's other big deer elsewhere. I'm not going to try to target a specific buck anymore. I'm done with that until something happens. How it goes. If the right one, big sucker pops up on your camera, you can talk is cheap. But
and that's kind of how I feel too. I mean, we've talked about this and I think KC wants me to target this deer a little bit, but more than I want to. But a teenager is liable to be really, really big next year. He was really just a big frame this year and had grown quite a bit. And so there's no telling. Like you said, talk's cheap. But as of right now, I keep trying to tell him, I keep saying man, I want to get, this is a good place to kill some deer, and really only one shooter buck in here right now. And who knows next year, but I was like, this is, I just don't want to come over here and hunt for one buck. It's a long ways over here. And it's a long ways in to hunt where he's probably going to be core area. He's going to be at the most. Mm-hmm. And he's very unpredictable. And I'm like, man, there are just places that we can hunt that are closer to home that maybe there's not a deer quite this size, or maybe there is. And that we probably stand as good a chance of killing at least a mature deer on as this place over here. So I don't know. I don't want to get just too wrapped up in teenager, but he's still out there as far as we know. We have some postseason pictures of him. So anyway,
unless there's some vehicular accident or something crazy happens, he should be around.
Yeah, yep, and that's what we're hoping for. And the thing is, if we can get a trail camera web put in there and start to figure something out. I mean, he's killable in the early season, I think, but we're just going to have to figure something out kind of major before that happens, you know. So other than Texas, we'll be doing some out-of-state hunting. And I don't know, the things that we're kind of having to remind ourselves of to do are things like know the regulations. Because I remember in Kansas last year, we started out wearing a bunch of blaze orange like we do in Texas. You know, we were like, oh, well, I don't know if we have to do that, you know.
Yeah.
Started reading the regulations and everything. And so that's, you know, definitely regs are important. Make sure you know. And I know the regulations in Kansas. I just, you know, I haven't hunted a bunch of public out there, you know, because we've always had a spot somewhere, you know, on private. So, know that. I think one thing that you are very good at is map scouting. And so, you know, instead of sitting there watching Netflix every night, maybe spend half those nights doing map scouting if you're going out of state, and you'll make your time worth more. And when you come back, your wife will be like, oh, you brought something, you know, like you don't just go out there and spend a bunch of money and come back with nothing else. You know?
Sure. When that map scouting stuff's fun for me. Like, I just love looking at maps. It's kind of unexplainable. But something I've started doing is, you know, we go out of state with the idea of hunting public land most of the time. But with OnX, you can look at the landowner names and parcels and start plotting out doors that you might want to knock, as opposed to driving around and like,
Trying to
there's
catch a farmer.
house. Yeah, you know, like you can figure out like who owns what parcel and where their house is. That way, if you do want to go out of state and go knock on some doors and figure out, you know, who lives where, and if you can hunt some places, it's much more efficient. You know, it goes back to the efficiency thing we talked about, you know.
For sure, yeah. You want to be efficient, man. I mean, it's a good thing. Another thing that we've talked about, and we've done this between the two of us, at least we've done it quite a bit, but calling biologists and just checking up on anybody in the area local that might have ideas, you know, or just information. You know, I mean, you never know when a farmer saw a giant buck and it's just like a 3-year-old or whatever, and you're not targeting that buck maybe because you're hunting Iowa or something, but you know, if you try to figure out who this guy is after talking to him, and maybe you can realize that he's seen bigger deer than that class, you know, whatever. But yeah, your biologists are going to know a lot about what's going on in the area. And, you know, you talked about this, and you do this really well, but without being like pompous or, you know, egotistical, just letting that biologist know after, you know, pretty quickly up front without like, you know, like I said, without being like a jerk about it, but like make sure he knows that you've done your research, you know a little bit about hunting and stuff like that, and maybe the area, and just chat it up with him. And once he sees that, a lot of times he's more willing to give up a little better information, you know, than just like, yeah, you can go hunt on this area, you know?
Yeah. Well, and two, you know, just to add to that, like maybe, and I've learned this from experience, but instead of calling a biologist and using them as an information source, also acknowledge their existence as a human and talk to them.
Yes, yeah.
You know, it makes a huge difference when you're just like, you know, what's it like? You know, where you're at? You know, what's one of the conservation issues y'all deal with a lot, or stuff like that, you know, and really having a conversation. Like I did this here a while back. I called a guy in a place that is way far from home, and I was, you know, I'd been doing some map scouting or whatever, and talked to him and kind of just asked him how often he made it out to this area, this certain parcel or whatever, and talked to him about it, and, you know, if he grew up there, you know, how he's seen the deer population shift through the years and stuff. And then after like 15 minutes of conversation, and that led down a big long path of CWD talk that, you know, we were both passionate about, he says, you know what, man, there is a place that you should really check out while you're up here, and go look at this drainage while you're here. Mm-hmm. You know, and that was like a huge thing where he, not to make it self-serving, you know, but at the same time, like I was calling for information, you know, and just because I took the time to like get to know that guy, and in the future, I plan on like going and visiting their office and talking to him more, you know. But because I took the time to be a friend and be friendly, I got probably a little bit of extra info that's hopefully going to help us out in the years to come.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, these people, get treated probably a little bit
Like
used.
beat dogs sometimes.
Yeah,
man.
yeah. And so, it's good to be nice. And
Can you imagine being a biologist like in, I don't know, a destination place like Southern Iowa?
Oh, yeah.
Like, hey man, I need a place to kill a deer.
Yeah, tell me
it's
me where they're at.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you go out there and find an ag field and you hang in a tree near it. I'm sure that's what they tell people. But.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. Yeah. Just acknowledge that they're human beings. And like we've talked about several times on the podcast, like human, people are the most important thing on this earth. So
yeah,
be nice. Another thing you got to think about going out state, and we think about a lot, is living situation. And so we're kind of spanning that like gap between like broke young guy and like adult that actually does things like you're supposed to. And so sometimes there's like you're camping, sometimes there's a truck camping, sometimes a backcountry, sometimes it's just straight up, like in the camper of your truck, or then sometimes it's in a hotel, and depending on how much you want to spend, it's how good a hotel it is, but you got to think about that from a money standpoint and also a scent control standpoint, which is a point you made earlier.
Yeah.
Because one thing you have done in the past, booking motels, is tell them not to spray any like smell good stuff.
Yeah.
Don't spray our room down with like flowery stuff,
And the reason I knew to do that is because I actually worked at a hotel in college for a while. And I know that they have two things at hotels. They have this like industrial size thing of air freshener, which smells like roses, and it's not the greatest for deer hunting. They also have like industrial sized ozone machines. So think about like an ozonics unit, but it looks like a carpet blower. And they can go put that in the room, some places at least. And not only this may or may not be stretching the truth if you call and say this. So if it's not you, then don't do it. But if you call up a hotel and say, hey, I want to book a room, but I have allergies, which we all have allergies, right?
Yeah.
Most of us.
Yeah.
I have allergies right now.
I do.
So I really want to make sure that there's no allergens or anything in the room. They'll go in there and put that ozonics machine in there and kill stuff, and then, or not ozonics, but ozone machine.
Ozone.
Yeah.
I was thinking.
And it'll, then you got your whitetail room.
Yeah.
But not every place will do that. But at least you can call and make that request, like, hey, when y'all go to clean and prep this room, maybe lay off the perfumes in a sense.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so, traveling with a buddy and splitting the hotel costs and gas and that kind of thing is also another effective thing. We've talked about that several times. So, I mean, in the next few months, we've got several podcasts coming up that we've pre-recorded and that we will record that just includes more summer prep, summer scouting, that kind of thing, how-tos, and we'll really be starting to focus on whitetails, even though we are going to be still doing some fishing and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think I have a trip to the mountains to take still.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep. So
That's cool. We do realize it's not summer for most people yet, but here it's going to get to like 95 today, I think. So it's pretty much summer.
I would be surprised if it didn't go more than 95 today, because it was blazing when I was picking Meemaw's garden this morning. So... but yeah, we've got a lot coming up for you. Just make sure that if you like this podcast and you want to hear more, that you're subscribed to it, because that helps us out and helps you out. And also reviews are great too, so appreciate that. Don't forget, there is a giveaway going on for the t-shirt still. We'll do that for a couple more weeks maybe, but we're going to close it down pretty soon. And all you got to do is subscribe on YouTube, comment on our Rock Trolls video, and you are in the running for one of these sweet shirts. So it's pretty, you got a pretty good chance right now. So until people start doing that thing, you got a pretty good chance. Don't forget the links in the bottom to the cameras and that kind of thing. Anything we can link up if you want, if you're interested in it, check it out. And remember, this is your element.
Living it.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live, headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.